So I want you to picture the average millennial for a second.
Okay.
Maybe it's you. Or maybe it's someone you work with. But if you ask them point blank what their absolute highest priority in life is.
The thing they genuinely believe will finally make them happy.
Right, exactly. What do they usually say?
Well, statistically speaking, they say money.
Overwhelmingly.
Mm.
I mean, there was this recent survey where 80% of millennials named getting rich as a major life goal.
Mm-hmm.
And 50% of them. They said their goal was to become famous.
Which is wild, but it really tells you everything you need to know about the modern delusion.
The modern delusion, yeah.
We are just so culturally conditioned to believe the good life is a destination. Like it's a place you arrive at once you have the status and the bank balance and the follower count.
Like we think we could just buy our way out of the human condition.
Exactly. We think comfort is the ultimate goal.
But we've got a problem
Yeah.
because that destination is a total mirage. So today we're doing a deep dive into what we're calling the paradox of fulfillment.
It's a great topic.
Yeah, and we're going to strip away that cultural conditioning by looking at two massive but totally conflicting bodies of research that honestly usually don't get talked about together.
Right. So on one side, we have the Harvard study of adult development, which was led by Robert Waldinger.
A big one.
The biggest. It's the longest study of human life ever conducted. We're talking about tracking people for nearly 80 years to see what actually correlates with a good life.
And then on the other side, we have the work of social psychologist Brock Bastian. And his focus is on the psychology of pain.
Which sounds bleak, but...
It sounds super bleak.
Yeah.
But this is the research that explains why that comfortable, rich, famous life you might want could actually be a recipe for severe depression.
So the mission for this deep dive is to synthesize these two ideas. We want to completely dismantle the quick fix mentality of happiness.
Because the data suggests that a good life isn't built on ease at all. It's built on a very specific kind of friction.
Right. Let's start with the Harvard study because the scope of this thing is frankly ridiculous.
It really is. I mean, most psychological studies are lucky to last, what, like 5 years before the funding dries up?
5 years, maybe 10, if they're lucky, or the researchers just lose interest and move on, but started in 1938.
Wow, 1938.
It's totally unprecedented. They tracked 724 men year after year until they were in their 90s. And the sample group is fascinating because it controls for privilege in a really smart way.
Right. They didn't just look at one demographic. They had two very distinct cohorts.
Yeah, group one was Harvard sophomores, the greatest generation.
These guys finished college and immediately went off to fight in World War II. They were the golden boys of their era.
And then group two was the control. They were boys from Boston's poorest tenements.
The absolute bottom of the ladder.
Exactly. These families were specifically chosen because they were troubled and heavily disadvantaged. We're talking no hot water, crumbling infrastructure, literal rats in the walls.
So you have the very top of the social hierarchy and the very bottom?
And to be clear, this wasn't just a survey they mailed out every decade asking, hey, are you happy? Check yes or no.
Thank goodness, because self-reporting is notoriously unreliable.
Oh, memory is entirely creative. It's not a video recorder. If you ask someone how they felt in 1954, they'll just make it up based on how they feel today.
Right.
So the Harvard researchers actually went and interviewed them in their living rooms. They got their medical records, they drew their blood, they scanned their brain.
They even videotaped them arguing with their wives.
They did. They captured the absolute raw biology and sociology of their lives, not just the psychology. They watched these men go from teenagers to grandfathers.
Okay, so fast forward 75 years. You have tens of thousands of pages of data. You have factory workers, lawyers, bricklayers. I think there was even a future U.S. president in the mix.
John F. Kennedy, yes.
Okay, wow. So when you run the regression analysis on all those lives, does the wealth matter? Does the fame matter?
Not at all.
Zero.
The correlation is practically non-existent once you pass a very basic survival threshold. The clearest message screaming from decades of data is this: good relationships keep us happier and healthier, period.
I mean, it sounds almost too simple, like something you'd find printed on a cheap greeting card, not in a rigorous medical journal.
Love is the answer.
Yeah, it feels soft. It feels like a platitude.
It sounds soft, but the biological mechanism behind it is incredibly hard. It turns out that loneliness is functionally toxic. It's not just an emotional state, it's a severe physical stressor. The study showed that people who are more isolated than they want to be experience earlier health declines in midlife.
Their bodies literally break down faster.
Their bodies break down and their brain function degrades much sooner.
So loneliness acts like a slow-acting poison.
It is a predictor of early mortality that is completely comparable to smoking or obesity. But, and this is the nuance people usually miss, it's not about the volume of connection.
Right. It's not about having 500 friends on social media.
Or even if you're married.
Because we all know you can be incredibly lonely inside a marriage.
Precisely. The data shows that high conflict marriages, relationships without affection, are actually worse for your health than just getting divorced.
Wow.
It's the quality of the close relationship that acts as the buffer.
There was a specific finding about physical pain in octogenarians that I found really striking when looking at the sources. Because usually when you're in physical pain, everything just sucks.
Yes, they looked at men and women in their 80s. And obviously at that age you have physical ailments, arthritis, back pain, the works.
It's unavoidable.
But the people in happily partnered relationships reported that on days when their physical pain was high, their mood stayed totally flat. They didn't suffer emotionally.
Whereas the people in unhappy relationships,
their physical pain was actively magnified by emotional pain. The brain interprets the physical signal differently depending on your social context. If you are unsupported, the pain literally hurts more.
that is wild. And that actually leads us to the third lesson from Waldinger. It's about cognitive decline. I think everyone fears losing their memory as they age. We spend billions on supplements and brain games to stop it.
And yet, secure attachment seems to be the best shield we actually have. The study found that people who felt they could truly count on their partner in times of need had sharper memories for much longer.
And Waldinger made a point to say these weren't perfect couples. Like, they weren't just holding hands and smiling all day.
Oh, absolutely not. Some of these couples bickered day in and day out. It drove each other crazy. But the key metric was, if I really needed you, would you be there?
And if the answer was yes, the bickering didn't damage the brain.
Exactly. The insecurity of a toxic relationship, however, essentially wears down neural pathways over time due to chronic stress.
Okay, so if the data is this irrefutable, if relationships are the magic pill for health and memory, why is everyone still chasing money and fame? Why do 80% of millennials want to get rich instead of get connected?
Because relationships are grossly inefficient. They are messy, they are unpredictable, and they are really hard work. And humans are biologically wired for the path of least resistance.
We want the easy life.
We want to control the variables, and you can't control other people.
And this is the pivot point. We think we want a life free of pain and struggle. But this is where Brock Bastian's research comes in to basically slap us in the face with reality.
Bastian calls it the Panadol culture. He quotes a popular marketing slogan for painkillers that says, "When pain is gone, life takes its place."
Which implies that life and pain are mutually exclusive, that real life only starts when the hurting finally stops.
Correct. And biologically speaking, that is a complete lie. We have this modern obsession with the pain-free existence.
Oh, for sure. We have a pill for every ache,
Yeah.
a distraction for every moment of boredom, a block button for every single person who annoys us.
But Bastian argues that by systematically eliminating pain, we are accidentally eliminating our capacity for pleasure.
This goes back to how the brain processes sensation, right?
Yeah.
Like, they aren't separate systems. It's not like there's a happy circuit and a completely separate sad circuit.
No, they overlap significantly. Pain and pleasure activate similar neural regions. But here is the technical kicker. They both rely on the exact same opioid system.
Wait, break that down, because we usually think of opioids just as painkillers.
They are. But the body's natural opioids, like endorphins, are released to manage pain. And that release is actually what creates the feeling of pleasure. Think about the runner's high.
Right. You don't get that euphoria by just sitting on the couch watching TV.
You get it by pushing your body against a pain threshold until the brain is forced to release the opioids to compensate.
So you literally cannot have the chemical high without the preceding stressor.
Exactly. Pleasure is essentially a relief mechanism. If you don't have the stressor, you don't get the relief.
So if you try to hack the system, if you just flood the brain with pleasure without the contrast of pain, you get what Bastian calls the fifth chocolate bar effect.
Yeah.
I definitely relate to this one. The first piece of chocolate is absolute heaven.
The second piece is good, but by the fifth piece, you're indifferent. By the seventh piece, you actively feel sick.
It becomes repulsive.
This is the biological trap of the good life that people are imagining. Endless comfort isn't endless happiness, it's nausea. It's homeostasis kicking in and saying, enough, we're done here.
This sounds like we're losing our baseline tolerance for anything difficult.
Yeah.
Bastian uses the term psychological immune system, right? I love this mental model because it really explains why we're seeing such high rates of fragility today.
It's the perfect analogy, really. Think about how we build biological immunity. We introduce a small dose of a pathogen, a vaccine, so the body learns how to fight it.
And Bastian argues our minds work the exact same way.
Yes. We need exposure to failure and loss and sadness to develop psychological resilience.
But we basically stopped vaccinating ourselves psychologically.
We've done the complete opposite. We've created sterile environments. Look at grade inflation, for example. A's are the most common grade now compared to C's in the past. We have helicopter parenting that removes obstacles before a child can even trip over them.
We have trigger warnings for anything that might cause even mild distress.
So we're raising these bubble boys who have absolutely no immune response to adversity.
And then we wonder why anxiety and depression are skyrocketing.
When you protect someone from all adversity, you don't make them safe. You make them incredibly fragile. When the real world inevitably hits them because you can't block reality forever, they just crumble. They literally don't have the mental antibodies for stress.
There was a study Bastian cited involving ice water that proves this isn't just some abstract theory. It actually measures this fragility in real time.
The ice bucket study. It's a brutal experiment, but it's so effective. Researchers measured lifetime adversity.
Basically, how much trauma or struggle have you faced in your past?
Right. Have you lost a parent? Have you been injured? Have you gone through a divorce? Then they asked participants to hold their bare hand in a bucket of freezing ice water for as long as they possibly could.
It's like a raw test of pain tolerance and emotional regulation.
And what they found was a Goldilocks curve. People with very low lifetime adversity, the highly protected ones, pulled their hands out almost immediately. They had zero tolerance for discomfort. They just panicked.
And what about the people with high trauma?
They also struggled because their nervous systems were already overloaded.
Yeah.
They were sensitized to threat. But the people in the middle?
The Goldilocks zone of moderate adversity.
They held on the longest. And here's the most important part of that study. They also reported the highest levels of general well-being in their daily lives.
That is the ultimate takeaway right there.
Yeah.
A life without pain isn't a lucky life. It's a profoundly weak life.
It creates a huge crisis of meaning. We so often confuse happiness with comfort. But humans value things based on what they cost us.
The marathon analogy is definitely the best way to visualize this. If I offered you $50 to sit on the couch for 4 hours, you'd take it, but it wouldn't be a meaningful experience. You wouldn't frame the $50 and hang it on your wall.
But people will gladly pay hundreds of dollars to run a marathon. They pay money to suffer. Why? Because the value is the struggle.
If you remove the pain from a marathon, if you just took an Uber straight to the finish line, the medal is worthless. We need the physical resistance to feel the psychological achievement.
Bastian points out that this applies to charity and social movements too. The ALS Ice Bucket Challenge didn't go viral because it was easy.
Right. If the challenge was eat a cupcake for ALS, nobody would have cared.
It went viral because it involved a visceral shock. The discomfort of the ice water was the signal that you actually cared. It was a costly signal.
Speaking of visceral shocks, pain also forces us right into the present moment. Bastian talks about something as simple as cutting your finger.
It acts as an involuntary mechanism for mindfulness. If you slice your finger while making a sandwich, your anxiety about your retirement fund or that awkward email you sent instantly vanishes.
Your entire universe just narrows down to the throbbing in your hand.
It cuts entirely through the noise. It demands your absolute attention. We spend so much of our modern lives living in the past or projecting into the future. Pain is one of the few natural things that forces us to be exclusively here. It grounds us in reality.
And I want to loop this back to Waldinger and the Harvard study, because we established earlier that relationships are the absolute key to health. But Bastian argues that pain is actually the glue that builds those relationships in the first place.
Yes, this is the social glue theory. And Bastian did an experiment with the chili peppers that illustrates this perfectly. He brought groups of strangers into a lab. Half the group shared a pleasant experience. They ate a sweet butterscotch candy together. Nice, easy, no stress.
And the other half?
The other half had to eat a raw bird's-eye chili pepper.
Oh, man. I'm sweating just thinking about that. That is not a pleasant bonding experience at all.
It's incredibly intense. But afterwards, they had these groups play an economic game to measure their cooperation. The group that suffered together, the chili pepper group, showed significantly higher levels of cooperation and generosity than the candy group.
But why? Why does burning your mouth off make you a better teammate?
Because shared struggle dissolves social boundaries. When we are vulnerable together, when we let our guard down because we're in literal pain, we bond. We stop posturing. You see this in the military. You see it in disaster relief.
Like the Brisbane floods you mentioned.
Exactly. 55,000 strangers didn't show up to help clean up Brisbane because it was a sunny, nice day. They showed up because of the mud and the sheer devastation. The pain of the event is what galvanized the community. Shared comfort rarely creates deep bonds, but shared adversity almost always does.
So if we zoom out and look at both of these studies, we're looking at a synthesis here. The good life is a total paradox.
It is. Waldinger tells us we absolutely need deep connection to thrive, but Bastian tells us you cannot have deep connection without vulnerability, and you cannot have meaning without friction.
So the modern millennial goal, the wealth, the fame, the total ease, is actually a direct path to isolation and fragility?
If you numb yourself to pain, you completely numb yourself to joy. That's just the basic physiology of the brain. And if you avoid the messiness of relationships just to avoid conflict, you lose the protective benefits of human connection. That's the sociology.
So what's the actual prescription here? How do we apply this to a random Tuesday afternoon? Because we can't all just go run marathons or eat raw chili peppers every day to build character.
Well, from Waldinger's side, it's about leaning into the friction of people. Replace your screen time with actual face time. But more specifically, he talks about resolving conflicts.
Getting over the feuds.
Yes. Holding a grudge is biologically expensive. It keeps your body in a state of chronic low-level stress. It keeps your cortisol up. So reaching out to that family member you haven't spoken to in years isn't just a nice thing to do. It's a literal health intervention. It protects your future brain.
And from the Bastian side,
stop trying to medicate away every negative emotion. Obviously, we aren't saying you should seek out trauma or stay in abusive situations, but when life deals you a low grade at school, a bad breakup, or a really hard project, don't look for the exit ramp immediately.
Treat it like a workout.
Exactly. Recognize that the struggle is actively building your psychological immune system. Choose the marathon, not the couch. Yeah. When you feel that resistance, lean into it, because that is exactly where the meaning lives.
It totally changes how you view a bad day. Instead of it being a failure of happiness, it's just a rep in the gym of resilience.
And it provides the necessary texture that makes the good days actually feel good. You need the contrast.
I want to close with a quote Waldinger shared from Mark Twain because it feels like the perfect summary of this whole tension between time, pain, and connection.
It's a beautiful passage. Twain looked back on his life and wrote, "There isn't time so brief as life for bickerings, apologies, heartburnings, callings to account. There is only time for loving but an instant, so to speak, for that."
A pretty stark reminder that the clock is ticking for all of us. Stop chasing the pain-free life because it doesn't exist. Start building the connected one.
That's the hard work that actually matters.
But taking all this in, it leaves me with one final thought for you to chew on. We spend all this time building technology and artificial intelligence to remove every ounce of friction from our daily lives, to do our writing, our scheduling, and our thinking. But if friction and shared struggle are the literal biological sources of human meaning,
are we engineering our own obsolescence of joy?
Exactly. If we succeed in building a totally frictionless world, we might just accidentally design a world where we feel absolutely nothing at all.
Something to think about the next time you ask an AI to write an email you're avoiding.
Truly. Well, that's the deep dive for today. Go call a friend, maybe eat a chili pepper together, and we'll see you next time.